Have you ever noticed how almost everyone you talk to these days admits to feeling stressed, anxious, or overwhelmed? It's not just you. Anxiety has quietly become one of the most common emotional experiences of our time. In fact, many experts are calling it the anxiety epidemic, a modern mental health crisis that doesn't discriminate by age, gender, or background. But why is this happening now? Why does it feel like everyone is stressed all the time? And most importantly, how do we break free from this cycle so we can live calmer, more meaningful lives? Today, we're diving deep into the psychology of anxiety in the modern world. We'll look at where this epidemic comes from, how it affects our minds and bodies, and what we can do, practically and realistically, to take back control. What anxiety really is. Before we can talk about the epidemic, let's make one thing clear. Anxiety itself is not the enemy. In fact, it's a survival mechanism that's been hardwired into our brains for thousands of years. Imagine our ancestors living in the wild. If they heard rustling in the bushes, anxiety would kick in, making them more alert and ready to respond to danger. Without anxiety, humans might not have survived. But here's the catch. The brain hasn't evolved as quickly as modern life has. Today, we're not being chased by lions or threatened by predators. Instead, our threats come in the form of emails, deadlines, financial worries, social media, and constant comparison. And our brains respond to these modern stressors in the exact same way they once did to physical danger. This mismatch between our biology and our environment is one of the reasons why anxiety feels overwhelming in the modern age. Why anxiety is everywhere now. So, what makes anxiety feel so much more present today? Let's break down some of the biggest reasons. The pace of modern life. We're living in the fastest era in human history. Technology, work, and social expectations demand that we move quicker, achieve more, and never stop. The constant pressure to keep up leaves little room for stillness, reflection, or rest. Anxiety thrives in this environment because our nervous system never gets the chance to reset. The pressure to be always on. Thanks to smartphones and the internet, work and personal life are now blended together. Emails come in at midnight, messages ping while you're having dinner, social media scrolls never end. Our brains are being trained to believe that we must always be available, always responsive, and always perfect. This kind of pressure creates chronic, low-level stress that eventually grows into full-blown anxiety. The social media effect. Social media deserves its own spotlight here. On one hand, it connects us. On the other, it bombards us with carefully curated images of other people's lives. Everyone looks happier, healthier, richer, and more successful than we feel. Even though we know these posts aren't the full story, comparison is automatic. Our brains interpret this as, "I'm not good enough," which fuels anxiety and self-doubt. Economic and global uncertainty. Rising living costs, unstable job markets, global crises, and even climate change, all of these add layers of worry. The feeling of uncertainty about the future is one of the biggest anxiety triggers, and in today's world, uncertainty seems constant. The decline of real connection. Ironically, in a world more connected than ever, loneliness is on the rise. People report having fewer close friends, less community support, and weaker social bonds. Isolation is a breeding ground for anxiety because humans are social creatures. Without meaningful connection, our worries echo louder inside our own heads. How anxiety affects the body and mind. One of the reasons anxiety feels so overwhelming is because it doesn't just live in your thoughts, it lives in your body. When the brain perceives a threat, it activates the fight or flight system. Hormones like adrenaline and cortisol flood the body. Your heart races, muscles tense, breathing quickens. This response is useful if you're running from danger, but when it's triggered by a stressful email or an awkward social situation, the physical symptoms only add to the fear. Anxiety becomes a loop. You feel nervous, your body reacts, and then you feel even more nervous about your body's reaction. Over time, chronic anxiety can lead to insomnia, headaches, stomach issues, weakened immune system, fatigue, and increased risk of depression. This is why anxiety isn't just in your head. It's a full-body experience with real health consequences. The hidden forms of anxiety. Not everyone experiences anxiety in the same way. Some feel constant worry and overthinking. Others feel restlessness, irritability, or unexplained physical symptoms. Here are a few forms anxiety can take. Generalized anxiety, a constant sense of dread or worry about everyday life. Social anxiety, fear of being judged, embarrassed, or rejected in social situations. Performance anxiety, stress that arises when you need to deliver, whether at work, in school, or in creative pursuits. Health anxiety, constant worry about physical health or potential illnesses. Existential anxiety, deeper worries about purpose, meaning, or the future of humanity. By understanding that anxiety wears many masks, people can start to recognize their own patterns and address them more effectively. Why it feels worse than ever. You might be wondering, haven't people always felt stressed? Why does it feel so much heavier now? The answer lies in how chronic and inescapable modern anxiety has become. Unlike in the past, there are fewer natural breaks. Work follows us home. Social media follows us into bed. News notifications bring global tragedies directly into our pockets. Our brains are constantly stimulated, which means they're constantly alert. And when the brain never gets downtime, it starts to malfunction, leaving us in a permanent state of stress. Breaking free from the anxiety epidemic. The good news is that while anxiety is widespread, it's not unbeatable. There are real, practical steps we can take to reduce stress and reclaim our calm. 1. Reclaim your attention. Anxiety feeds on scattered focus. Practice being intentional with your attention. Turn off unnecessary notifications. Limit screen time. Create no phone zones, especially in the morning and before bed. The less your mind is hijacked by constant alerts, the calmer it becomes. 2. Build healthy boundaries. Say no to commitments that drain you. Define clear work hours if possible. Give yourself permission to rest without guilt. Boundaries are not selfish, they're essential for mental health. 3. Practice grounding techniques. When anxiety spirals, grounding exercises can pull you back. Try the 5-4-3-2-1 method. Identify 5 things you see, 4 you feel, 3 you hear, 2 you smell, and 1 you taste. This simple practice reconnects you with the present moment. 4. Move your body. Exercise isn't just about fitness. It's one of the most effective natural anxiety relievers. Even a 20-minute walk can reduce stress hormones and release endorphins that boost mood. 5. Strengthen real connections. Invest in relationships that matter. Call a friend, spend time with family, join a group or community. Human connection is one of the strongest antidotes to anxiety. 6. Mindfulness and relaxation. Meditation, journaling, deep breathing, or simply sitting quietly can calm the nervous system. Mindfulness doesn't have to be complicated. It's about creating tiny pauses where your brain can breathe. 7. Professional help. Sometimes anxiety becomes overwhelming despite our best efforts. Therapy, counseling, or medical support can be life-changing. Seeking help is a sign of strength, not weakness. The bigger picture: a cultural problem. It's important to remember that the anxiety epidemic isn't just an individual issue, it's cultural. We live in systems that glorify constant achievement, hustle, and comparison. Our schools, workplaces, and even media often fuel the problem. While individual strategies are powerful, collective change matters too. Workplaces that value balance instead of burnout, schools that teach coping strategies instead of endless competition, societies that normalize rest, vulnerability, and asking for help. When we shift culture, we create environments where anxiety doesn't thrive. The anxiety epidemic is real, and it's reshaping how we live and connect with one another. But here's the hopeful truth. Anxiety may be common, but it doesn't have to control us. By understanding what fuels it, by reclaiming our attention, setting boundaries, and building real connections, we can push back against the stress of modern life. If you've ever felt like you're constantly on edge, know this: you're not alone, and you're not broken. Your brain is responding exactly as it was designed to, but to a world it was never built for. And that means with awareness, compassion, and small daily changes, you can begin to feel calmer, stronger, and more in control. Anxiety doesn't have to define our generation. It can be the wake-up call that helps us build a healthier, more balanced, and more human way of living.